And so now I would like to ask the next panelists to unmute and to switch on their video. We know that Sebastian was called into an emergency meeting, so we will be joined by Markus Schmitz, by Engrossa, by Lionel Chaine, and by Martin Stegink. And so here we are. Let me switch off.
And Hendrik, one of the, I just want to note that it's funny coming from the U.S. And coming from a business school at MIT. The public sector often is dismissed as uninteresting, but I'm telling you, here in Europe, it is fascinating. The challenges that the public sector faces, the scale of some of these challenges, and then the solutions are phenomenal. So it's thanks to including a category on the public sector that I have learned over the last 10 years a tremendous amount from digital leaders in the public sector. And I have to say, I've convinced my business colleagues in the US of the value of learning from the public sector, because as we'll hear now from the finalists, they have some amazing solutions and approaches given some particularly tough conditions in which they're working.
Okay, absolutely. And so what I would suggest is that we start with a small round of introductions. And I'm going to just go in order that I see people on the screen here. So Markus, if you could please introduce yourself and the organization that you work with.
Hi there, my name is Markus Schmitz. I'm sort of CIO of the Federal Agency of Employment. Our mission basically is to bring, to connect people to work. But at the moment, as you can imagine, due to the Corona crisis, one of our main missions really is to bring benefits also to the people. We are currently having 800,000 companies receiving or applying for short-term labor benefits. And at the moment, our ERP system is quite busy, so we are paying 200 million euros every day. So it's like snow in the sunshine. Our sort of budget is going out. And so I'm looking forward to our discussion. So thank you so much for having me in this panel.
Okay, thank you. And Markus, you are in Nuremberg, right?
Yes, we're based in Nuremberg, but we have about 1,500 dependencies all over Germany. But the headquarters and the IT department, the Agile campus, is in Nuremberg.
And the beautiful city of Nuremberg.
Yes, indeed.
Louis, if you could introduce yourself, and if I'm correct, you're in Lisbon today, and introduce yourself and what you do today.
Hi everyone, first of all, my name is Luís Engrossa. I'm based in Lisbon. I work at the Portuguese National Institute for Conservation and Nature. Before that, I worked for 15 years in the Portuguese Water and Waste Services Regulation Authority, a totally different public organization. And before that, I was in the private sector, in the automotive sector, working for Scania, and even before that for Iveco. So this is Luís.
Okay, thank you. So that was from beautiful Lisbon, Louis. So let's go to Paris. How is Paris today, Lionel? And how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. So I'm Lionel Chaine. I was till the end of May the CIO of La Poste, the postal organization in France, in charge of the parcels, the mail, and all the new services deployed by La Poste organization until the beginning of June. Now I'm the CIO of BPI France, which is investment bank from La France.
Okay, thank you, Lionel, for joining us. And of course, we've done the interview with you in the most beautiful city in the world, Paris, when you were still at La Poste. So the stories that you bring are your experience and amazing things that La Poste in France has realized. So there's so many interesting stories that you can bring us from Paris. So let's go to the also very beautiful city of Amsterdam. Let's go to Martin. If you could introduce yourself and your organization, Martin.
Hey, good afternoon. So I'm Martin Stegink. I'm Global IT Director from Greenpeace International. And I'm based in Amsterdam. And that means I'm responsible for all IT in Greenpeace, as well as the IT on our ships, which I think is quite a special thing. And you see here, there's one behind me.
And how many ships do you have nowadays, Martin?
Well, we have 3 ones that we're using globally: the Arctic Sunrise, the Esperanza, and the Rainbow Warrior. But a lot of our national and regional organizations, they have some ships as well, but these are the 3 big ones.
Okay, good. And I can imagine that the crisis has an impact on shipping as well, but we'll come to that in a moment. Niels, if you could take the conversation away.
Sure. So we wanted to build on the conversation we just had with the previous set of finalists, and focus on Agile. This is a theme that we heard come up from several folks talking about how this approach to getting things done is proving to be a really valuable one. And so before I ask the panelists for their experiences with Agile, I wanted to ask those participating today, particularly by Zoom, about this poll. We've got this question around: where is your organization in terms of company-wide adoption of Agile? The first 2 focus on, to what extent is IT, is it really an IT thing? Is it partially Agile now, or is IT fully Agile? But maybe your organization has now adopted it beyond IT. And so maybe several other departments now have adopted Agile, or it's throughout the entire organization. We'd love to get your thoughts on this by participating in this poll. And we'll leave it on for just a few more seconds as people participate. And I wanted to actually first, as we wrap this up, I wanted to ask around Agile methods and the Agile mindset in the organization to the finalists. Maybe if we could wrap up the poll now, if we could close the poll. Great.
Here are the results. So the results of the poll are 50% of the participants in the poll says that IT now is partly Agile. So IT is typically the first adopter of these methodologies in an organization. And so half of the participants say that IT, we are doing it partly. 15% says IT is fully Agile. 15% says no, also other departments. It has spilled over the borders of the IT departments into other departments. And about 20% said our organization is already completely Agile. And I would like to track the people that answered that last one, because that's going to be interesting. So I'm going to stop sharing here and let's have the discussion.
Yeah, so the good news is, because we're 4 panelists, it's much easier, and I encourage you all 4 to just really jump in. I'm not going to, before we kind of had to be more disciplined about who talks when, but please let's really just have a discussion around adopting Agile, and to what extent has your organization adopted it, and what kind of value have you realized from that? Who wants to start?
Sure, I'm happy to take the start of that. We would be definitely in the area of IT is partially Agile. We're not just doing Agile in development, we're also doing Agile in operations. Even in support, we're doing some form of Agile, but in the rest of the organization, it hasn't really moved on yet. We're trying to convince other units. We've been working with HR to work with that. And I believe there's a lot of benefit in it, but there's also challenges. So we're a distributed organization, so that means that our staff members are everywhere around the globe. And then I mean Greenpeace International, not Greenpeace as a whole, right? So our national regional offices are even left outside of that. But so if you're in different time zones, then how do you do your scrum, for example? And these are challenges you run into. But on the other hand, there's big benefits as well, because you are not so connected if you're in different time zones. So I think Agile offers you an opportunity to be more connected, to be more in touch with each other, and also obviously to be more flexible.
And is that something that just to build on that, have you seen some value in those that have already started to work in an Agile way with this pandemic, given that now that's really constrained how people engage with each other?
Yeah, if I look at my own department, we didn't change We didn't change anything because we were already distributed. We were already working Agile, and our systems are suited for that. So the whole organization worldwide, so including our national regional offices, was able to start working remotely from day one. And so but I think really where the change is or where the benefit is in Agile is that we didn't change any of our working processes in IT when we're doing Agile, because we're used to work that way already. We're used to adjust priorities to what's happening. We didn't put any special meetings for that. We just did it in the flow that we have already.
Yeah.
I confirm. I have to manage an organization which is around about 1,000 development teams, guys. And when we have to jump in the lockdown, in fact, nothing happens. That means the velocity of the teams and the ways that they are practicing is still the same. Because as we are using Agile at scale, everything is well organized. That means in agility, usually we are thinking about you can do whatever you want. But in fact, agility is a very organized method. Everything is all the ceremony. Sorry, I just so it was to go in the Agile as a distributed mode. It was very easy, in fact.
Great. Markus, let's go to your organization, because you are working in a huge organization and you've implemented Agile there at a large scale as well, right?
Yes, indeed. And so when I sort of took over the post of CIO, the idea was to overbridge the gap between the business side and the IT side. And we started I would say, Agile transformation process, which is still on its way, to be honest. So I would be on the partly part as well. And what I would have to say is that the Agile transition we have started was a very good training ground now to tackle the challenges of the crisis. So I can see that all those teams that were trained in the last years, that they did an excellent job. And I can just give you some examples. When we had the lockdown in March, we had 1,500 sort of branches that were closed down. And the whole online track became sort of really on a big effort. We had 800,000 visitors every day. And we sort of implemented bar camps and Agile methods to bring together the business side, practitioners from all over Germany on an online way. And we were in the position overnight sort of to rearrange our whole portal. And we had a very sort of intense legislation going on in Germany, as you can imagine, like new benefits, new services. And on a daily way, overnight, we actually could sort of bring in new landing pages, and we brought in bots. We developed in hackathons, and I wouldn't have been able to deliver that with an old-fashioned IT organization. And what is really helpful now as well is that the business side saw, which was sometimes a little bit reluctant when it came to Agile methods, oh wow, sort of we see the effects, and we see that actually the online sort of and the Agile method really helps us to bring out better products than in the past. So actually for us, it was quite a big success factor to have started earlier on, and now we could actually work on that one. So for us, it was really helpful, and actually I'm so glad that we started some years ago. And it's a long way still to go, to be honest.
Sure. And Markus, how do you go about, have you come up with any metrics to assess the better part of, to assess whether products or services are actually better than before?
Yes, of course. So just give you an example. We also have the child benefit system. So whenever a child is born, we pay the child benefits every month. And we had an online track. It was the first online track in our history. And we had an incredible usage rate. It was, I think, 1.5%, which is nothing. And the business side said, well, it's online. There is a cool online track. I said, well, 1.5% is nothing at all. And so this was the first sort of training ground for us. It's 3 years ago. And we did sort of the whole customer journey thing. We implemented Agile methods, and now we have 40% of the parents use the online track. So, wow. And this sort of for the business side, this was so such a big insight to see, wow. And now, at the beginning of this year, we had a new sort of child benefit process implemented in Germany. And we developed a second track with them. And within 1 week, we had 100,000 applications online. And so it's just two examples. And so the business side really sees that the fruits of the Agile development really make sense. And my experience really is you have to do it and to show, and you have to create showpieces for the business side. And what's quite funny is today one of my colleagues called me up and said, well, Markus, now when the crisis is over, we have sort of to go on using the agile methods like the bar camps we have just implemented, which was the nicest call I had today, actually. So, and yeah, but it's a long way to go, I have to say.
Cool. Luis, tell us about Agile and the benefits you're realizing in your organization.
Well, first of all, we are not an Agile organization today. We're not. But we have the conscience that we need to evolve. So we have a digital transformation process going on. And I mean, this pandemic situation, it's not all bad. When it comes to Agile, it is a good help, because from one day to another, all the organization had to move from the office to their premises. Everyone went home, and we started to use a lot of tools that we already had, but we were not using them. So this was a good thing. And then the organization now is thinking, okay, we have the opportunity to go and continue in this path. We don't want to turn back. The main problem here is, I don't know how it is done in the other countries, but in Portugal at least, when it comes to public sector, if you don't have the right regulations, you cannot do things. For instance, if you have some kind of legislation that says you have to fill some kind of form in paper, then you cannot dematerialize that you cannot digitalize that work process. So the regulations are something of a pain.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand that. Now, Lionel, let's go back to you. I mean, because when I was in Paris, I was very, very impressed with what La Poste in French have been doing with les facteurs, with the postman. Can you tell us how that has evolved since we last met? And because you were implementing a lot of new services of this huge workforce that you have and that visits every house every day in France. I mean, tell us what's happening with that project.
Everything is going well. Even during the crisis, it was quite hard to manage the business. And in that case, you can see all the ability of all the benefits of having agile organization. For example, we have to build a very, very fast solution for managing all the information required for special delivery. Because during the crisis, for example, we start with just delivering 3 days a week. So I was trying to manage a lot of traffic and to manage how to implement and how to optimize all the tools made by the postman. And in fact, my teams developed, for example, new kind of optimizing tool in the next 2-3 weeks. They just have to manage that. And if you don't have the ability of agility at scale, it was quite impossible. For example, 3 years before, we were not able to manage that kind of change. And for example, we implement AI solutions to read addresses on our phone. It was something that we can manage for our sorting machine. And the team implements this new kind of features in just 2 weeks. And also we deploy that on the 75,000 mobile phone of our postmen. But all that, it was because we were ready to be agile at scale, and what we just returned, it was distributed agile at scale, which is quite easy to manage. But all the architecture, all the way of working, all the development, CI/CD were ready to do that. That was quite a big issue, and we proved that we can manage a very hard situation with very clever tools to manage that.
Yeah, but tools isn't everything, of course, because I mean, the Post, I can imagine, is a very conservative, traditional organization. So how do, I mean, the human aspect and the change management aspect, and same in the huge organizations in Germany at Arbeitsagentur, how do you change people's mind to become agile themselves and not only using agile methods?
It's quite a long journey. We start 4 years ago in the mail part of the organization, and 7 years ago in the parcel part. It's quite a long journey. But what the reason why I think we succeed is because we don't have the choice. Because the postal business is changing very, very fast. The digitalization impacts the mail traffic, which is decreased very, very fast. And when it is your main business, you have to find new kind of revenues, and we have to provide services. And in fact, La Poste organization now provide more than 80 new services, which is mainly based on digital services. For example, we took a snapshot of photo in the street to locate the rubbish that the city have to collect. We have many services, and due to that, the constraints create the innovation part.
Okay. And Markus, how did you do that in your organization? What are the best practices to advocate and train the other organizations?
Well, the first thing really is what we started with is that what Anke said beforehand, that the agile sort of mindset is part of our IT strategy. So we have our own IT strategy, which is very much linked to the federal agency strategy, and agile working methods, agility is has a sort of core part in that strategy. Secondly, we said we have to explain this to our employees. So what we do is we did what we called road shows, where we went out to the different campuses, and we had in the last roadshow we reached 1,000 employees. So I went out with my team, and we explained what we want to do with them. We brought showpieces of very good agile products. So we built up an agile campus where we are now exploring completely new working methods. So we really teared down the walls and built for 170 employees agile locations. And I've now in August we're starting a new campus here right in the center of our headquarters, which is a very big symbol that there is an agile campus within the headquarters of the federal agency. So it's going to start next month, really. So and I actually think that you have to make it very physical to show it to people. So we have showrooms where we say, well, look at this. And another thing which is very dear to me is that what I do is we have all the projects that start, they have to start in an agile way. And we do what I call stage gates, where the project teams shows me deliverables, so MVPs. I don't want to see PowerPoint charts. So I have about 30 meetings every year where the projects show me their MVPs. And what I found out is that we bring it to all the employees in the headquarters, to the business side. So we really have, it's a big transformation process. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, what we have started is we have implemented quite a big qualification scheme for for leadership and also for the employees who work in that project. And it's quite a big of an invest. But what is really important is that you offer these qualification schemes also for the business side. I've seen many IT organizations that are perfect in agile methods, but the real challenge is to get the business side to enroll for these qualification schemes. But still, I mean, we are quite a big organization, so I would say we are right in the middle. So there's still a way to go, but you have to start at some point.
Okay.
I've just got a follow-up question for Markus on that, and then open it up to the others. As I mentioned in the previous panel, one of the aspects of Agile is you're generating insights, right? It's an approach to learn about a whole variety of uncertainties. What customers need, what we're capable of delivering, whether it creates value and is sustainable, et cetera, right? There's a variety of questions that this approach helps us. What do you do with all the insights? How do you manage this accumulation of insights? Is that just something that stays with the employees, or or how do you handle that?
First of all, we have some cooperations. For example, we have a test cafe of the Fraunhofer Institute here in Nuremberg, and each project has sort of an own sort of practitioner circle that actually work very closely with those teams. And when I sort of took over this post, it was a little bit difficult to get it, but I found it as sort of what I call digital change team. And this digital change team I've implemented actually collects all those insights. They organize the stage gates. They make sort of agility checks before sort of a new project lead starts his or her project. And they actually sort of make sure that there is sort of this knowledge transfer. And it's a very small team. It's just sort of 6, 7 colleagues, but it's sufficient just sort of to collect all those insights. And sort of when a new project team starts its work, they sort of give all those insights, what we have learned. They give sort of examples how to ramp up sort of a practitioners group, how to hook up with the different sort of test cafes we have all over Germany. And they also organize those stage gates where they sort of present the MVP. So this is sort of our approach. I'm not quite sure whether it's the best one, but that's how we have just started. So we'll see. But it works quite well so far, I would say.
Is this something that the other panelists have addressed? I know it's one thing just to get Agile in, but anything about this kind of accumulated knowledge and what to do with it?
I can add a bit, I think. In our case, we handle it building a sort of factory. So those insights are considered as raw materials. When they come in from several places, we put them in an Excel sheet. Then we interact with these kinds of needs from several people from the business. And then we eventually talk to those people, to the ones that are using the systems to try and make the functionalities work better for them. Then there is the side of the prioritization with the management, because the resources are what they are, so we have to establish prioritizations. And again, working as a factory, it's also an easy way for us to communicate an agile way of doing things without touching the subject. Because this idea of factory, the machines, everything working, everyone knowing what to do when it comes their time to be involved. I mean, this idea, it has its advantages.
Okay, that's great. That's interesting. How about at Greenpeace? How is, this idea of I mean, especially given how distributed your team is, sharing insights across such a distributed team, any critical success factors that you could highlight that's helping accomplish that?
Well, and I think in the end it's all about communication, and I think that's what Agile prescribes as well, right? I mean,
exactly.
It says it's people over processes, it's communication over procedures, and so that's what we try to facilitate. After every sprint, we do retrospectives. Now I have to say I guess we're quite a bit smaller than most others. My global IT team is about 45 people. But then we're in 14 countries, so quite spread. We do retrospective after every sprint. Usually those direct results are staying within the team. So the team is figuring out for themselves, what worked, what didn't work, how do we make it better? Occasionally that means they want to make changes that go, have an impact on things outside of the team, and we discuss them in the management team. And occasionally when we do a big change to the way we work, we do a larger review. And so we do the review and then we just discuss the outcomes. And because it's a smaller scale, I think it's a little bit easier to make sure we talk about all this information. But then the challenge of being so spread means that you'll have to do things twice, right? So we usually talk about, we think Europe is the center of the world, obviously. But so we do one session in the morning, one session in the afternoon, and so we can actually get Asia and America regions involved. And so we just do double work in that sense.
Thank you, Martin.
I'd also like to confirm that what Markus said about getting the business to be agile. I think that's really important because it's also one of the roadblocks that you get into if you start doing agile. Because often people say, "Well, I just want to have a system like this. Why don't you just go implement it?" And they don't want to be bothered with all the questions or being involved and spending all the time because they're busy. But I think when you get to the point that they're actually involved, they start seeing that if they're involved, they get the results quicker, they get things that fit their needs better, and it costs less, right? Because you don't do everything, you just focus on the stuff that's important, and so I think they will find out it's beneficial. So I really like the idea of having that qualifications team also being for leadership and non-IT employees.
I've got a follow-up question for Lionel. Lionel, you recently changed from La Poste, from the postal services in France to GFI, a big bank, if I understand it correctly, and a state-owned bank also, if I'm not mistaken. What's the challenge that is ahead of you? What is the maturity of Agile in the new organization, and did they specifically bring you in to make that more agile? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, I just turned because it's a big challenge for me because I don't know the business of the bank, and that's the reason why they choose me. Because they want me to transform our investment bank in a more agile bank. That means mainly they want to be a fintech with a network. That means this is quite a big challenge for me. Because that means you have to bring the DNA of the fintech inside a business, which is quite a big one. So we have already decided to deploy agility at scale using also safe pattern. And so most of my jobs till I start now is to prepare the mindset of being in a more agile way. But at the same time, as a bank, we have a constraint about compliance and so on. So it's quite a new challenge based on that. And my challenge is to prove that we can be an totally agile at scale bank, but respecting all the constraints of a big bank on the investment part.
Okay, so good luck in your new challenge. I will we'll come and visit you in 2-3 years and see where you are and what new results that you have created there.
With pleasure.
Okay, merci beaucoup. So Niels, what I suggest is that we wrap up this panel. So unless there are some final questions or final remarks, some final comments that people make.
Actually, so unfortunately we're out of time. There are actually several questions that we have not gotten a chance to address, but we can work with the panelists to address them afterwards. Unfortunately, we are at the time. So questions there are, but we just don't have the time.
And so like we said before, the video interviews of these 4 fine gentlemen, you will find on CIONET.tv. And so go and check that out. There's a lot of good information out there. And dear panelists, please check out the Q&A and help us to answer the questions that are in there. And so with that, I would like to thank Markus, Luis, Lionel, and Martijn for this panel.